Okay, so welcome, Cristina. So we are very pleased to have you today for this MIDIS ARCHI, which is like I would say like a tradition of the head inviting either juries or people which are working on subjects connected with the studio and the themes that we are thinking with the students. So I think the best is to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself, and I think we will get who you are probably even better through the works that we will see. And would be nice also to have a little bit of conversation at the end of the conference. So we've asked our students to prepare some questions. I also had a few questions that I wanted to ask you, and that's it. So welcome on board, and we're listening to you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I will share my screen. Perfect. I will. Perfect. So good morning, all. The kind of the title of the lecture is community infrastructures, thinking in, and I will explain it a bit later. Now, this idea that from how the architecture also it's related and as kind of as a process with the community, but at the same time also enhancing and promoting the relationships between the people. So as a brief introduction, as Lacol, we are a cooperative of workers, a non-profit cooperative of workers, and that we started to working together also as students almost 12 years ago. But since 2014, we are kind of constituted as a cooperative and working as in our professional environment. And of course, our practice, I think, has been affected, but also related absolutely with also kind of a socioeconomical context in Spain. So we finished our degrees and we became architects around 2010. So almost in the middle of the economic crisis, and many of our friends and colleagues just went out of Spain to work. But we also understood it was also an opportunity to redefine the role of the architect and the way that we wanted to be engaged of a kind of social transformations. So that's why our practice since the beginning and the first years that we get involved has been looking for new protocols of urban transformation, understanding how we envision the urban field as a space that needs to be transformed based of new parameters, also as an alternative to the urban transformations led by kind of capitalist values, and taking in consideration how the cooperative values and the relation with the territory, the people, also with feminist and also environmental sustainable perspective can change. So it has been also a process to understand the time, kind of the strategy, the collective work, and the legitimacy of the citizenship as ingredients as part of our architectural work. And Camballo, which is our first project where we get involved as students, was an opportunity to redefine what a cooperative neighborhood can look like and how to start from the theory that many collectives had been working also as an alternative to in a moment where the welfare state and the welfare policies were in a way dismantled, how we can have a collective response to individual and collective needs. So it was an opportunity to to bring or to start from the theory to the practice to the transformation of our neighborhoods. But these processes also allows us to understand that new protocols of provision of architecture, of practice of architecture were also needed. And we started to work in different moments of the architectural project with the community. So it was our engagement with participatory process, understanding also how the people, the needs, the skills, the time, the materials and resources that we found in the different kind of places were essential. But also these processes allows us to understand the potential and the power that this process has to also to create the community, like building. We used to say with some of the projects that we are building housing to build community, but it was also the beginning. So just to building a stair can become a place to build the community, and understanding how then they are empowered to manage, to transform, to appropriate all those spaces, such as kind of cultural spaces, but other many informal activities that appear. So after almost 10 years working, and as I said, and understanding the participation in different kind of forms, formal and informal, nowadays we are working in our main direction is understanding how the participation and the community involvement, it's not only something about consultation, which kind of maybe when we had been working for the public administration, it was like only like specific moments in the process of the transformation of the urban context, but we are kind of working to give the control to the users, and we understand how when the users take the control of the processes, it's also in a way phases of emancipation, social emancipation, understanding that we as a society can become active agents and also it's also a process of democracy, how we have the tools, the information, and as I was saying, and the protocols to be engaged in our surroundings. And that's why as Lacol, and maybe you have already kind of read this sentence from our website, we said that we work to generate community infrastructures for the sustainability of life as a key tool for eco-social transition through architecture, cooperativism, and participation. And that's the reason that we introduced this concept of community infrastructures, which are kind of new institutions that can be physical but not physical also. So spaces of organization, spaces promoted by the community that can end with the construction of a specific programs and specific buildings in our cities. But through these processes, we are refining the way we relate to each other, the models of conviviality, also how habits, routines has a depth impact in terms of the gender construction, and also how we can redefine our practices to be more sustainable. So that's the reason that I will introduce a series of community infrastructures that we have been working the last almost 5-6 years. And the first one that I want to introduce is Coopolis. Coopolis is, it's called kind of an Atheneus, which is it's a space produced also in Camballo with an idea that came from the community, the need to introduce again economic activity in the industrial formal premises. So Coopolis is a project that is being promoted by the community, by the municipality of Barcelona, with public funds from the general government, and is becoming the first incubator of social economy in the city. And as the community wanted to start kind of activity, they basically ask Lacol to transform an old industrial block with fewer resources in the first kind of seat what it will be, Coopolis, which is going to be a public building. So here we can see how in the first phase, just in a corner, we built a kind of a box with the resources that we found in the place, and these are basically like pieces to generate some kind of models and materials in one of the formal practices. So Coopolis has had two main phases. The one was this corner of one, and the second one was this continuation. So it has been also a strategy to open certain doors to get light and ventilations inside these buildings and generate this, as I was saying, temporary infrastructures to control the comfort in certain areas, to make able to have kind of office activities, but also classes. And also this has become a spaces where certain new cooperatives are starting their activities. So as I was saying, it was basically something to take part of the roof, to get light, to open windows, and building this kind of boxes. That in the other photo, it was basically the small office of the professionals who are working here, and these ones are just basically new classes to take kind of this, or to share all this knowledge about cooperativism. And this was the second phase, and here we can see kind of these models where the new cooperatives are kind of starting their activity inside this industrial block. And also this process was intercooperation process, as in the surroundings of Castelló there are a cooperative of carpenters. So basically also the wood was one of the materials, because we wanted to introduce the workers and the community as part of the process. And again, this idea to understand different levels of comfort, different levels of interaction between kind of the projects and the spaces where the different projects can share, and also with the professionals. And following this idea of generating infrastructures that promote social economy, I wanted to also to explain Le Communal, which is the place where I'm now. So it's also here we have the headquarters, like the office of Lacol, together with 8 cooperatives. And basically this has become a cooperative hub. So in a certain moment, 8 cooperatives, we were looking a place. So our office was becoming really small, and suddenly other projects in the neighborhood had the same need. So we started to look for kind of potential places, and of course 14 architects looking for a place is a bit difficult. So suddenly any of the places was interesting, and we found an all industrial building, totally closed, and we got in touch with a property, which is kind of a family with a lot of buildings and properties, and we made a proposal to reconvert this industrial site in a cultural and economic hub. And basically the project, it was the reconversion of all the industrial block, and built a small building just in the party wall to give also kind of a new facade to the public space. It was, in fact, the building was closed because they had a high level of historical protection. So the property didn't know what to do. So for us, it was also beautiful to understand how, as a constraint, what we can touch, what we cannot touch, and what it was historical protected. So all the facades and all the kind of the window, the rhythm, also the colors, and the scheme of the facade was totally protected. But suddenly it was this in-between spaces which had a really precarious kind of roof that were kind of not included in this report about historical like this, the historical heritage of the building. So suddenly what we did is understand these spaces as also environmental devices, and were the spaces when we allocated all the kind of the facilities such as bathrooms, stairs, installations, and technical kind of stuff, and also that can provide services to all these open and flexible spaces. And this is something that maybe you can see a little bit here, no? All these facades with totally free spaces that allocate in each floor one of the projects, and these in-between spaces that were also extended to outside to generate the stairs and the entrance to the site. So as I was saying, we tried to leave the space as we found it, just basically kind of this roof, just including the lights and the ventilations, but then working with these in-between spaces, also generating some kind of views to the others, but understanding how this can become a new facade, but also on a space that keeps the sun in winter, and we take the air for the ventilation from these in-between spaces. But then in summer, it's just we just open the greenhouse, we put these shadows, and this allows also to increase the ventilation inside the offices. And we can see here where we have the stairs with the entrance door, and here this box where we have the offices and bathrooms from one of the offices, and also some installations. And we continue this new construction to the outside in order to generate a new facade for this courtyard, which wants to be open to the surrounding. And the idea in the future, because we just started to plan greenery and all these different metal structures, the idea is to become certain kind of green area, which also wants to become a certain even environmental refugee, where in summer the streets are really, really hot. Here with certain shadows and also the greenery can be a better place, but also with this multi-purpose room and different meeting rooms that are open for the cooperatives, for the different projects, but also many collectives of the surroundings are using them. So became also an infrastructure that give spaces to meet to the community. And we understood these projects as I was saying, as community infrastructure, because there are projects that are led by the citizenship. So basically, we are like working in parallel, working together, bringing our technical teams and working with the different committees from economic, from kind of the economic consultancy, the legal consultancy, just to promote kind of the legal frameworks, but just as providing the architectural assistance, but also allowing to promote certain discussions about how we want to live, what we want to share, also in a professional environment, but also, of course, as I will introduce, in the housing environment. No, so as part of this idea to generating infrastructure of resilience, also because we are located in Sands, which is a popular neighborhood that where there is also this changes also produced by the gentrification, but the exclusion of people from the center of Barcelona to the surroundings where Sands is allocated, but also where the vulnerable people of Sands can or are have to also to move if they don't have a stable housing. So basically, La Borda is our first approach to collective housing, and is a project that more than the building itself, what looks for is to introduce the cooperative housing model, which is something that in Switzerland you are really used to that, but this is really new in Barcelona and in Spain. So basically, this was kind of the first, as I was saying, our first collective housing, but also the first project in collaboration with the municipality and built in public land and with a new construction. And for us as architects, it was also the opportunity to build collective housing with the people who is going to live. So some of the major challenges of collective housing is that when you are working for a private developer, for example, you don't used to know the user, but also when you work for the public administration. And this allows us to understand which kind of methodologies and which participatory process we establish, and which new tools can we use. So through different workshops, meetings, committees, we sought to develop, starting by the definition of the user, understanding through different surveys who will live in each of the flats, how they were living before Laborda in terms of the unit of conviviality. But this also allows to have a lot of data and to understand how the project had to fulfill the different needs from the different typologies and units of conviviality, understanding also affordability, also introducing sustainability as a way to reduce and eradicate the energy poverty. But then we were also able to challenge certain regulations of the housing in Barcelona, because we had a lot of data. And for example, it was compulsory to build a parking, for example, in the underground floor. But through this information and to just fighting to reduce the impact, the environmental impact, but also promoting a new way of mobility, we were able to introduce a change in the regulation that affected Laborda, but also affected other projects. So this idea that we were interested always in this in-between spaces that allows to produce precedents, to produce policies, and to generate kind of pilot experiences. And following this idea that we started by the user, the definition and the needs, we started to discussions about the model of conviviality, the meaning of a home, and what we want to share in the building, from the energy supplied, as I was saying, kind of different models of mobility, but looking how these models has a huge impact in terms of health and care, for example, thinking that in Spain we have a really old population, and we are facing the challenge of how we will deal with an aging population, how we can introduce new models of provision of care, and we understand the cooperative housing also as a place to share all these needs, and how these buildings can provide also infrastructures for the surrounding, but also understanding that the surrounding has a lot of equipment, and how we can understand how the common areas and the community spaces are a continuum from the individual room to the library, for example, no? And this was a process to discuss the real needs of the community in the definition of the common areas, but also how the common areas are going to work, no? Which can be different scenarios of management, from the laundry, but also from the collective kitchen, because this is something really new in Spain. We don't have a culture of sharing. Every flat has their own washing machine, for example, something that maybe in Europe it's more common. So, and it was also the need working with the shared community. I saw that working with the model of conviviality community to discuss how each of these common areas of these community spaces can have a benefit in terms of social interaction. For example, when we were discussing about the collective kitchen, we realized how the gender division of the household was totally equal, because each person of the community will cook for the others in the same way, and which in Spain there is also a high average of women that has leading or taking all the reproductive task at home, and at the same time also all this collectivization of the infrastructure basically allows to reduce the energy consumption, which is something that it was also essential for the community. And after defining the needs, the programs, the environmental goals, and Laborda has the idea to reduce as much as possible in terms of the energy demand, also to reduce the energy cost, but also the environmental impact of the construction through the use of new and more sustainable materials. So after this process of definition of the parameters, we started to define the building itself. And in this case, something that we realized that was crucial is this transition from the public realm, from the street to the community areas, which here became courtyard, to arriving to the private, which are the flats. And in this promenade, we will find the different community spaces. So also Laborda wanted to make more permeable the park where he's allocated. So they introduced a public passage in the ground floor, which was also the entrance to the community, leaving a cooperative of consumers in the ground floor, the collective kitchen, arriving to the multi-purpose room in the second floor, and also the guest rooms, the laundry, and then starting to go upstairs to the different circulations in this courtyard, which was close with a greenhouse to generate kind of an atrium, which is energy saver, collective energy saver, which but also this protection allows the life to happen all the year, which is something that we wanted to feel, that the home started by the door at the entrance, and you can just move around the building as part of going to any of the rooms of your flat. And this also had, of course, an environmental behavior. So the idea to densify the south facade to keep as much of units as possible, and to understand how this atrium has different kind of operates different in summer and in winter. How in winter it's totally closed and keeping the sun energy. In summer it's already open and promoting kind of a chimney effect. And in the ground floors, all the common areas, and also in the first floors from the north facade, as this transition from the public to the private. And once kind of the main strategies were defined, we started to talk about the housing as an open infrastructure, as a flexible system created through a matrix of non-hierarchical spaces that can be aggregated and interconnected, having different typologies. And also, as a second level of participation, understanding how this infrastructure is defined through the election of options, the position of the kitchen, the entrance to the bathroom, but then how each user, through basically like temporary kind of divisions, will finally define the use of each of these rooms. And all this was developed through different materials, models, drawings, also regulating the language to make the architecture as accessible as possible to the inhabitants, and arriving to this kind of collage of different units of conviviality with different typologies organized around this courtyard. And the last decision that we took with the people was about the materiality, about the construction, and the assembly really wanted to make a difference, and we decided collectively to build with CLT, which was kind of the highest building in wood in Spain in that moment. And basically this matrix of rooms has also became a structure with all the walls became in just this CLT system. And here you get kind of a journey from this ground floor with the cooperative of consumers, which is open to the neighborhood, arriving to the courtyard. And here we have this collective kitchen and space of the community that basically was finished by self-construction. And this is a photo from some months ago. Today the kitchen is almost finished, and they are started to have one dinner per week all together, organized in different groups. Arriving to this multi-purpose room, and here we see kind of the guest rooms, spaces that have different levels of comfort. So as you have seen, like the kitchen and and this space is closed. The multi-purpose room, it's open. So in winter, it's a bit colder than inside, but in summer also have kind of with this kind of windows totally open, it's almost feeling outside. As I was saying, the infrastructure is not finished. So all the common areas has been kind of transformed and built by the users in different phases. And the next step will be the library, which is kind of open here nowadays, and all the different storage that we can see here in each floor. Here, the temporary library, where the place where the clothes are dried, become also kind of a collective terraces where kids also used to play and just play with water in summer, arriving to this on the inside of this kind of flats with these interconnections of rooms of the same size and without any kind of furniture or condition that decides the use, and how the people are kind of appropriating the spaces. And here an image of this south facade and these spaces interconnected with the terrace. One example of the kitchen in the middle, but everyone just allocate the kitchen and the paintings and the ending materials and colors quite different. And I wanted to share a video, which it was a collection of different moments that were, maybe I can put it right now and I will explain it. But basically, during people in Laborda started to live there almost 2.5 years ago. So suddenly, after 1 year of conviviality, the COVID arrives, and this was a kind of also kind of a moment that it was kind of the community was in a position of management the uncertainty, something that it was kind of absolutely new for everyone, but allows to overcome and to redefine the protocols of care, and also understanding that in Spain we had a super strong lockdown, and this allowed the community to understand that the flat is not the unit of isolation, it was the building, and they decide to have a lot of care, a lot of be conscious and had the responsibility to manage the situation, but allowing people to have certain levels of interaction, especially, for example, the kids that were suffering a lot to being alone. So they organized within the parents and adults a certain kind of a smaller school, but for the kids during some hour of the day. But suddenly the courtyard became a gym, and these are spaces that are kind of not community spaces as soon as a space that has a program, but are common areas that suddenly became, before the COVID, of course, spaces of each of the units, but during the COVID, spaces of making a sport, of playing. And this was something that the people felt really, really privileged to live in Laborda, no? And suddenly when someone, because they were working outside, get COVID, there were a lot of also mutual aid dynamics and support. So basically, I think that the importance of these infrastructures, more than the building itself, is basically what allows the community to organize and to, in a way, to manage any emergency. And this is something that even with climatic emergency, they are continuously making reports about the consumptions, about which kind of new protocols, which new rituals, how they can change the temperature of the laundry machine, for example. So it's basically allow the community to have the control of their lives, no? And this was basically spaces that allow the community to just outside with safe kind of security meet. And we are arriving to almost to the end with using this kitchen. And so basically the last minutes, I have like around 10 minutes to arriving to the 40. What I wanted is just really briefly show how after Laborda, we in a way made certain variations following the same principles. And always we understood how this the spaces of circulations, how the location of the common areas has been crucial in those projects of cooperative housing. And this was a non-winning competition for a new cooperative, which basically was allocated. This was kind of the pollution map of Barcelona. It was in kind of one of these rings with a high level of air pollution and also like problem with the air, but also with the noise. So we understood the building as in a certain levels, kind of all these transitions from a facade that is blocking the noise, but arriving to the south where we allocate all the circulations, understanding suddenly in a really compact building where we can maybe generate a area that relates the community, how we can load it in the most privileged area. So here, the most privileged area become the sun facade, and we get a combination of the corridors, galleries, to also give privacy, the main areas of the flats, but then introducing small kind of chimneys that allow to bring the clean air from the part that we have in front of the building inside, in order to avoid the ventilation through the north facade with the pollution of the air. No? So also became this kind of machine with all the environmental devices in the different levels, from with this courtyard, this gallery, and these corridors. And when the galleries are open, suddenly we have a terrace of almost 2.5 meters, where also is a space where the community will in a way interact, because it was the spaces where you are kind of entering home, and also again in the ground floor, allocating kind of a common space. And that we can see it here, that we came from the street, we arrived to the south, with the beginning of the stairs, but also where you can see the common areas. We made parking in here, but also as a kind of a multi-purpose room, something that also have ventilation openings, and that can become a playroom, and also where the bikes can be parked, and few cars will be using. Or the idea is that would use this space. And also in terms of the unit, it was a kind of it was really similar to Labor. Suddenly these different spaces with a bathroom and the kitchen in the middle. But here we introduced this room that can became 2 corridors. If the flat, it's kind of a small flat, but became a room, 2 different uses, such as a kind of a playroom, when this is all part of a kind of a cluster that are interconnecting 2 independent units with also different rooms. No? And this we were kind of kind of creating different scenarios of how different from the smallest to the medium to the large units, or even clusters, can be allocated with this really simple structure. And at the same time, we developed La Palma. Because after Laborda, as a pioneer project, the municipality established certain competitions for public land to become cooperative housing. So that's why we allow to develop different propositions with new communities. And La Palma was the second that we built, and we just finished it last summer. So we don't have images yet of how the spaces are used, but basically it has been a project that were totally based off in where it was allocated. This was kind of access of different facilities, from a kindergarten, elderly housing, youth housing, high school, and health center. So here the housing became a bit kind of an equipment for the surroundings. And also we had the high school really close, which doesn't allow the sun to enter in some moments during the year, and one quite crowded street. So we understood how the circulations can become certain filters, thresholds. So in the first floors, we allocate the corridors in the lowest floors. And then once the high school has kind of ended, and here we have kind of the south and the west orientation, the corridors became a filter in summer. And in the corner where this public access, we allocated the stairs and all the common areas also as a spaces of interaction. No? And here this kind of simple section with corridors on the different levels, and how this ask us to generate a kind of a reversible scheme of housing, where we have always the bathrooms and the kitchens in the middle, but then in the first floors we have the corridors here with the stairs and the common areas, and in the other and the highest floors we just turn the corridors, and then the flats also are operating in the other direction, arriving to the terrace. And this also allows to generate a kind of an open scheme of housing that you can use the day or night areas, depending if you wanted to face the corridor or you wanted more privacy, and depending on if you had kind of a small, medium, and also large flat. As you see, almost kind of using kind of also or testing the principles that we learn from Laborda in different kind of typologies and with different variations. And basically, it's a building that it's quite kind of permeable outside, that shows where all these open areas are allocated, since from the ground floor, arriving to the entrance with the porch and finding the common areas, but then kind of moving upstairs to the units, and also how this is kind of the stairs, but then here, for example, the corridors in the south facade. And always there is this kind of also promenade that while you are moving to the building, you have all those spaces which are spaces of circulation that are also becoming the terraces of the flats, but always also allows you to see if someone is kind of inside the common areas or are going outside of them. And the idea is also that to make it really open to the surroundings, and something also that it's kind of a building, then it's allocating the parts that always are kind of close or in the middle with a minimum hole in between doors suddenly became outside in the most privileged areas, arriving to the roof, to the rooftop, to the terrace, and also at the flats that here are just when we finish the construction, with you can decide which kind of program do you want to allocate, kind of close of the corridors, but then that you can work it reversible to the from the circulations to the other facade, making really permeable and having this kind of cross-sectional view. And here from the street. So I'm looking forward to see it, how it's going to kind of to show the life from outside. And just to finish, I just wanted to say that suddenly when we started to work also with new groups, we had the opportunity to work with a community that it's basically formed by women, lesbian, and LGBTQ. And it was interesting to understand how they are understanding the privacy, how they want to share, what they want to share. And it has been again a process of understanding the different typologies, the interaction between typologies, and also which programs of inside the home they are wanted to collectivize. And here it was also a study about how you arrive, which programs do you have, also because they want to provide certain space or point to assistance to the woman in the ground floor, the different common areas, but also this idea that the kitchen as a space of the woman historically at the home, as a space that has been associated to the woman, is the most public space for them. So it was also this transition that once we arrive inside the flat, they wanted to understand the kitchen as this space that they want to be. Sometimes it will be open, it will be the place where to share the coffee or to just be in contact with the others, arriving to the facade where the more private zones are located. Because, for example, in Laborda, there are some rooms in the courtyard, but here they wanted to understand how the housing It's also a continuum arriving to the room in the terraces. No, so but it was also again to this idea to understanding how we want the interaction in each of the levels of the building, and this is something that well, for us, it was beautiful. And basically, I would end with this photo from La Morada, this women's cooperative, just celebrating and presenting the project to the neighborhood. No, again, this idea of generating community in different levels. So sorry because I've been a bit more longer than what I expected, but hoping to have almost 20 minutes with questions and just discussing.
Thank you so much. It was very, very interesting. I think for us, it's very rich also to have the opportunity to listen to your strategies and how Lacol is investigating all these projects. I think it's also very interesting for us architects, but also for the students to understand the complexity of your work, all the parameters that are involved in the process in order for you to take decisions and make propositions. And I had a specific question for you because I was thinking yesterday, as with our studio with Nomos, we also work on collective housing, but we never actually had the opportunity to work for cooperative and to involve the users, as you said, in the process. And I was always wondering, since I've never did it before, how do you actually balance the input of the inhabitants, the future inhabitants, and how do you keep your role as the architect? How can you, is there a threshold? Do you give some specific rules before you start to do those workshops, or do you start to do the workshops and then you see how these inhabitants are and what can they bring and how you will go on?
Yes, thank you for the question. I think it's always really important to define, and because I think that basically there is kind of an invisible strategy of how to structure. So it's about also the architecture of the participation at the same time, you know, because these are projects that the community is leading and taking the control of the development, each of the axes from the economy to the legal to the modern mobility. So when we faced as the first time we understood that they wanted to be part of the architecture definition, but at the same time there is kind of a different kind of hierarchy. They have the total control of the development because they are taking all the decisions. But when we started to develop the architecture, we established certain levels. So we understood that the main discussions and they had what we call it as a collective, we call it in English, sorry, like, well, in a way, kind of collective decision making, in the sense that we established together and like basically we are like kind of following all the decisions about the needs, the programs, and the values. So this is the kind of the main point, which are things that are non-physical. So that's also understanding that they have the role to set the main kind of parameters. And then once we started to define the physicality, we started to reduce this kind of the level of participation, in the sense that suddenly we established certain decisions in terms of the unit configuration, and then understanding that also is a level of appropriation. When you don't define the use of a space, the user had the major role. No? So for us, it was a kind of from the collective taking decision that I don't have the English name, to the selection of options, to the appropriation, and also understanding that it's kind of a different level of control from the whole development. No? And in this process, in certain moments with a lot of workshops, also with different kind of tools, from drawing their own flat to using models, etc., etc. But in a certain moment, it was also basically about discussing, because I think that also the information is essential. And when we are discussing about which material we will build, we basically make different scenarios from concrete, metal, and wood, for example, with the impact in terms of CO2, but also economically, etc. And it was also kind of a discussion to understand advantages, disadvantages, risks, and this was, and in that moment, for example, it was totally defined. We gave options, and they had the information with our also evaluation. No, so we asked. So during the process, constantly we are kind of increasing the leadership that we take as a technicians, because we also understood that we have a knowledge that it's important. But I think that the information was something that made the trust to the inhabitants. So in the moment that they don't have all the control, because we are the technicians, gave them the information has been always crucial. And also we started by making aware that they are not the owners of the individual flat. They are members of a cooperative, and they will live in the building, but as it's kind of a collective ownership, they had to design collectively for looking in the eyes of the community, not the individual eyes. Mm-hmm. So it was also a process to make them aware about all these differences from the individual ownership, the sense of the belonging, to the cooperative. But at the end, it's something to establish, no, certain rules. And once the building is finished, we also have to define a kind of a manual where we explain what is infrastructural. So what things has to remain once one person left a flat, what things can be changed. And this is something that we also establish with them. No? So we also allow them to understand which role will they have in each moment, from the design to the construction, but also with the maintenance and the inhabitant, and also during the life of the building.
And would you say that to work in this way, which is not probably the regular way as we normally as architects develop housing, does it take much longer to achieve?
Well, in the first time in La Borda, it takes much longer, probably. But because we also started discussions with the municipality, we also asked for these changes in the regulation. So this also needed time. But in the followings, I think that once there is a certain methodology, but also certain kind of protocols with the municipality already established, it's being a bit more kind of shorter. But when we compare it with kind of a public development, the municipality or the Catalan Agency of Housing, they need even between 6-7 years since they start the project until they finish the construction, which is not that different from La Borda, which it was 6.5, for example. In case of La Borda, in La Palma, almost 5 years. But it's in the other way around. That I think that precisely because it's kind of a long process, they have the time to, in a way, understand or kind of assimilate all kind of the discussions that we have. So of course they have to learn a lot about certain kind of areas from economy, but also from architecture. And at the same time, the management of the process, I think that also it's a way to guarantee the future management of the conviviality, how you deal with the conflicts during the process, because of course there are conflicts about what you expect, which is different from your neighbor, or suddenly the budget is really high and you have to reduce and you have to reconsider the standards of the housing, and something that seems naked, maybe it's something that, and of course there are conflicts and challenges, and how you deal with that, I think that make the community stronger, no?
And the community, when they were not, let's say, all agreeing on some decisions that they had to take, did they vote or?
No, it's always by consensus. So basically, yeah, that also takes time, because just basically share the different opinions and always design exactly basically through consensus. So just basically discussion and talking about that and understanding the other and creating kind of this collective framework. But at the same time, I would say that despite there is time and a kind of an effort, I think that precisely because we worked with the community, we allow it to redefine regulations. We allow it to introduce certain kind of materials, kind of environmental devices. Also, this kind of relation between the private and the shared spaces, which are more transparent and more permeable than in other projects. So I think that precisely because the community and this time, we were able to really challenge many of the at least common Spanish standards of collective housing.
Thank you so much.
Great. I have one quick question before the students ask questions. The same way you're working on cooperative housing, you also said that you're a cooperative of architects that are all working alongside each other. And I was thinking I was wondering if you could tell us what are the limits, but also the benefits of working in such a way, especially for young architects that are starting to practice, just to understand the way in which you can structure your office.
Yeah, I think that the first thing that is always, I think that always architecture is a collective work, always. So that it's something that we had clear since kind of the university. And at the same time, each of us has different skills and all are needed for the management of the studio, but also of the development of the projects. And this is something that for us has helped in each kind of from the reproductive task, also about the management of the studio, which, for example, I'm really bad with kind of all the kind of bills, economical kind of things. So a colleague is able to do this for that, and I'm taking the in charge and the responsibility for another area. So all together we can, in a way, did it. But especially in the projects, and especially at the beginning. So because we have a general assembly a couple of times per year to envision kind of the future steps on the strategic management of the cooperative, but then in the daily basis we have a weekly assembly, a weekly meeting when where we in a way share the evolutions of the projects and also some kind of the propositions that arrive, etc., etc. And here you can share that you are leading a project, but you feel that in any kind of problem, challenge, moment, you have kind of the support. So we are constantly kind of sharing and sharing and growing together. But I think that the key moment is when 1 day per week we have what we call it workshop, which means that all the members or all that they are available in this specific moment, which we have it blocked. So during 2 hours we will talk about the project, and this we used to do it in the beginning or in a certain key moments. So it was a moment where collectively we define kind of the goals and main strategies, and it's a moment where almost 40 heads are thinking in the project, and also someone who is more specialized with participation, another one with housing policies, another one with structure design. So suddenly we kind of share our thoughts, and this is something that allows us to grow and to learn a lot. And we also we are kind of consolidating a network of collaborators, always that is possible, also cooperatives. So we have been working with an environmental consultancy that it's a cooperative with all these projects, and then also engineers, etc., etc. So I think that there is also a second level of cooperation that we also understood as a way to produce social economy, but also there is a trust, and this is something typical from any office. but we always want to visualize that. So we are always even inviting them to be part in some of the workshops to really understand all the inputs and in a way being more aware of what is this kind of project that we are involved with. But well, this is kind of a long question. I don't know if I really answer it, but well, I think that basically is this idea to visualize that never you work alone, and this is a space that we allows us to share with whom we want to work continuously, you know, in the daily basis, but also with the collaborators and also with the clients in a way. You know?
Thanks. Thank you. Maybe one of the students would like to ask a question. Nope.
I have one question. For the materials, do you only use materials coming from Spain, or do you still buy from maybe Europe or other countries?
Well, thank you for the question. I didn't put much the effort on the material, but I think that it's always important also for us. We are working in projects that we used to have a quite low budget. For example, in La Borda, we were almost kind of 30% of the standards of the social housing market, which is quite a few. So when we kind of are designing, sometimes we cannot make so we cannot invest, we cannot control the materials in all the stages, no? So for example, we put a lot of effort in the structure, for example, because I think that the structure has a huge impact in terms of environmental impact, in terms of the materials of the building, no? So of course, it's that we cannot be able to build as sustainable as we would love, no? But when we have the opportunity to decide, especially, for example, in the case of the structure of La Borda, which is made with wood, yes, we try to be aware about that. So the CLT is a system that it's really used and common in the north of Europe, but for us it was a kind of a contradiction to use the wood from the north. So we built it with a company that was starting in the north of Spain, which is Elle. So it was also a way to promote the technologies and the companies that we have here and learn it all together how to implement this system in Spain. So this was wood from Spain. But when we are talking about kind of the plaster layering, so it's the company, it's called Pladur, and I exactly don't know where they are coming the materials, no? So there are moments that we can decide, and other moments that basically because of the budget we are really limited and we cannot decide it. But of course, this is something that it's present in our world, and if we can decide in between two materials with the kind of the same function, price, etc., of course we are trying first maybe to reuse if it's possible, but then the most close as possible, no? Yes.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. I'm in the third year of head in architecture design, and I also had one question because I think a lot of your work is it's about creating a housing and also building a community at the same time, and I believe they're creating common spaces within these housing spaces, and this is also one of the factors I think that creates community within the people who are inside these residents. And sorry, and I was wondering, what do you think might be the common ideas or elements that are quite essential to creating these common spaces? Because for me, these common spaces for the residents is always quite not clear for me, because it's a big space with people where people can come, and it's usually empty, and sometimes it can be filled up with I don't know, some furnitures that can help the people to arrange their meetings or something like this. But I was wondering what you think about, like, what are the essential things about these spaces that are within these residences usually to create a community between these people who are in this residence?
Something that we have learned that each community has kind of a specific different needs. So this is not a kind of a generic formula that we can apply it in everywhere. So for example, in La Palma, there is kind of a library and workspace, which is something that, for example, in La Borda, there is not a space for that use. So the first thing that it's of course based on the needs of the community, which I think this is going to guarantee that they will be interested of managing it, of using it, etc. And the second one, I think that when we design these spaces, most of the time there is also an impact in terms of the units. It's not that you add a space, it's that you redefine also the equipment, the sizes, and the conditions of the individual units. For example, the units has a kitchen that maybe have 5 modules, I don't know, like 3 meters long, but which has the equipment that maybe allows kind of the daily basis use. But suddenly when you want to have a party, when you have a family dinner with 20 people, I think that here there is something that maybe we are not providing kind of enough space to have a huge pot to cook. No? So this is also allowing to understand that there is certain kind of users that you have another space more prepared for that. Or in the case of the laundry, of course, we are not having a space of the washing machine inside the units because we have those spaces, or we don't have or any of the flats has a kind of an empty room. So people were asking the flats based on the kind of individual needs, if they were having family, etc., with different units, but having in consideration that they are not looking to have an empty room because waiting of someday they have a guest because they have the guest room. So I think that precisely that the discussion about the community spaces, it's linked of the definition of the equipment, the surfaces, and the characteristic of the units. And this is also sometimes that there is this kind of I don't know how to say it, kind of interrelation. And I think that these are the two main bases, that there is a community behind this need and behind the definition of the architecture, and then that these spaces has an impact with the individual. Have I answered the question?
Yes, I think it. Yeah, so I think your point was the needs of the community was the first thing that we should be considering, and the impacts of the units of the people who are going to be here, or the second one that are quite essential to these creating these spaces. I think that's what I understood. Yeah, I think that's fine. I think you pretty much understood the question. I mean, yes, I think I was thinking the same thing before asking the question. I thought what was important was to create a purpose for these spaces, so that it won't be just an empty space. You see, people can come around and they can do, and it serves the purpose.
Well, and at the same time, that became, well, we call it that this idea of open infrastructure, following a bit even Abraken's theories, that it's related to the units, that they can change and evolve through time and the user, but also these areas. I think that the community is going to change because, for example, in La Borda now, there is more kids than when we had the design, but in some years, there will be much more elderly people. So also those spaces has to be able to adapt, to be adaptable. No? Or I know that on Mondays in the kitchen or kind of dining room, there is a yoga class. So how the space can become suddenly an empty space and with a kind of with the comfort to make it this. So that there is also about how you design those spaces to guarantee that they can have multiple users is something that is also part of the question. No? So
yeah, exactly. Okay, well, thank you very much for your answer.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you so much. I think it's really helpful for our studio to have the opportunities to ask you those questions and hear more over your answers. It's been we are right now working exactly on that theme with the studio, and I think what you brought, like the complexity of what we have to address in order to offer a design and a solution, is very large, and it needs to be adaptable. And I think this can be a good conclusion somehow of your beautiful conference. And I'd like to thank you very much for the time that you gave us. And I'm really looking forward to host you in a couple of weeks. And that would be our turn and the students' turn to show you how they work on communities and communal spaces right now in Geneva.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to see all the work from the students and meet all you in some weeks. Yes, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Cristina. Have a nice day.
See you. See you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.